Hello there. I'm going to talk about something that's close to my heart, which is plants. And I think plants are a very good way of connecting with the natural world because it's something you can do at home. You can you don't have to go anywhere particularly to have plants. Whereas with animals, that can be a little bit more complicated. Obviously, pets are not wild animals, so they are part of a natural world, but it's somewhat different from, say, going off into the wild and sort of finding wild animals, and they don't want to connect with us. Generally speaking, they want to avoid humans. So more connecting with them is generally more in a way observing them rather than actually interacting with them, generally speaking. And they have good reason to be frightened of humans. Look at the history of what we've done to the planet and all the creatures we've wiped out. And we are a species that is omnivorous, and we have a history of hunting and destroying habitats as well, which are two reasons why animals often don't like us. Anyway, going back to the plants, yeah, it's very easy to nurture plants in your own garden, in your own home. And you can also do things like foraging. Wild foraging, I think the best thing to do is perhaps transplant a few plants. Where you have, say, a huge patch of wild garlic, you could pick a few to dig up and bring home, and they will multiply and spread in your own place rather than hacking away at the wild garlic and bringing lots of it home with you. Why not just bring a couple of plants and then plant them, wait for them to spread, and you have your own wild garlic that you can harvest without having to go out into sort of wilderness areas for it. So I think that's a good strategy to use. So something about growing things that just sort of it connects you with the whole process of life, I think. And here in Ireland, traditionally, people would begin around St. Patrick's Day, which is fairly recently gone by. It's now Easter. So a lot of people would be thinking around now if they didn't start then, they might be thinking about starting at Easter with the gardens. And there's a lot of simple stuff you can do. You don't have to be an expert. The easiest plants to look after probably are things like cacti and succulents. They don't require a lot of watering. If you're the type of person that forgets to water their plants, you're probably better off with those. Although you do get the opposite problem with a lot of people that overwater their plants. They're trying so hard to care for them, they go around watering them all the time and end up killing them by overwatering them. If you ever see sort of a white mold on the soil around your pot plants, that's usually because you've overwatered them. That's a very bad sign. And they will actually start to droop, and the roots will rot from overwatering. So just be careful not to do that. It's very easy these days to look up the care of any particular plant you want to know about, and they usually will tell you about levels of water they like. If it's a plant that grows in a very warm climate or somewhere like the Mediterranean plants, they often don't like to be overwatered. So if you know where the plant comes from, what kind of region it's native to, that gives you a fair idea about whether they're going to be wanting bucket loads of water or not. So easy plants to start with for people who really don't know a lot would be things like strawberries and onions, onion sets. You'll find onions, sort of small onions, onion sets and bags in a lot of shops. It's sort of getting a bit late now, really, but you could still plant these and they will sprout. In fact, you might find that if you buy a bag, they've already sprouted. Strawberries are very easy to grow as well. You can get sort of very small pots, and if you've got people around who you know who've got them already, you'll often find they have runners that, if they haven't been cut off already, they'll be starting to sort of develop into sort of new strawberry plants, which are effectively clones of the parent. So they can be potted up very easily, and they're something that does require generally small amount of care. The main thing they need is watering, and if they're in pots, a little bit of fertilizing. Even tomato feed would do for that. So this time of year is a good time to be giving fertilizers. By fertilizers, I'm really talking, in my opinion, organic fertilizers is what you should be using. You can buy some liquid feeds with seaweed, which are often very good. And another thing that I like to use is chicken pellets. They're relatively cheap, and it's a natural form of fertilizer which you can just work into the soil. Just be careful not to put the pellets right up to the stem or trunk of plants, because it can cause burning, especially with sort of soft herbaceous plants. But that's a good thing to be using. Potash is okay as well. Like, you want to be careful not to use ashes from coal fires, though. If you have just used wood only in the stove or in an open fire, that's fine. You can sprinkle that on the ground. But coal has got lots of nasty sulfate and sulfites that can be acidifying, and quite often some other some heavy metals and stuff in there, which aren't going to be good for your plants. So for people who who really know what they're doing already, this isn't a very useful video. It's just a reminder that you get a lot of rewards from working with plants. Not only will they provide you with food in many cases, but it's a pleasure to watch them grow, to see them prosper, and to play some part in nurturing them. At least for my part, I think so. And of course, there's more spiritually minded ways of connecting with them as well. Even like sitting under a big tree, you don't necessarily have to meditate or go on a spiritual journey or anything like that, but just sitting and being with a big old tree can be quite an uplifting experience. And well, there's a lot of scientific evidence to suggest that woodland areas actually produce chemicals which are beneficial to humans to go and breathe in. It's actually good for you to go and spend time in and around trees, So anyway, there's just a few thoughts about that. It's getting to the point where the days are getting longer and longer. Once you get into May, you're really into a major growth spurt that happens. Most of the growth happens May, June, and July, particularly May and June. So you really want to be starting now if you haven't got started, because by the end of the month you're into the major growth spurt. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about doing some gardening and doing some planting, maybe for the first time, you'd want to get yourself organized and begin doing that. Perhaps this week during the holiday period is a good time to start. So anyway, that's it for now. And some of you may be aware already of this book I wrote called The Druid Garden. It's basically a guide on all the plants and trees that the Druids would have been familiar with, and the uses, some of the history of them, and how to look after them as well. I think that's particularly important because we do need to look after the natural world. We are getting more and more disconnected, I think, as people. Through technology, we're getting more and more disconnected from the natural world. So I think it's more important than ever that we make the effort to try to connect with the natural world in order to ground ourselves and to maintain some kind of balance in our lives. So I very much would like to encourage all of you to get out into the garden, plant some things, and even if you don't have time to do that, try and get out into the natural world. Go to the park, go to the forest, go to the beach, mountains, whatever, and connect with the natural world. It's very grounding, it's very good for you, and an antidote to all the technological life that seems to be increasingly taking over. I think we're not designed to live in a technological world. We are kind of trying to adapt to this rapidly changing world. But spiritually, mentally, physiologically, it's a big leap for us, and it's perhaps not the best direction in which we should be going. Maybe we're not ready for that just yet. But I think as a way of sort of trying to cope with that, I think we need to connect with nature as much as possible. So anyway, I've rambled on a lot longer than I had intended. Hope you found that interesting, and I'll put a link for my book in the description if you're interested to read that. Okay, thanks for watching. That's all for now. Bye-bye.